real world. Got it. But, oh, what happened here? But I'd emphasize there's lots and lots of resources out there. If you just, do a Google search on career planning, you'll get thousands of hits on that. Books have been written on career planning. So there's many different views on how you can do effective career planning. I'm going to tell you what I've seen work for me and for other people, in the areas of geophysics, geology, and engineering. And it's a little bit different than what you might find in a lot of these, textbooks or self-help books on it. But I just want to give you guys a different way to look at it. I'm not saying it's better or right. I'm just saying it's something I've seen work well. And you might think about it before you set off to start doing career planning. If it doesn't fit for you or doesn't work for you, that's fine. There's lots of ways to do this. I'm just going to give you, I think, a slightly different view on it. And hopefully you'll find this interesting. So before we launch into this, you need to know a little about my career, because my career influences how I think about career planning. So, the big graphic on the slide is basically a collection of every business card I ever had. You don't need to read all the fine print. You can kind of just look at the different companies I worked for. Each row has 3 jobs in it, and over on the far right is the number of years it took to get through those 3 jobs. So you can see that 3 jobs for me lasted anywhere between 6 and 9 years. And if you tally all up, I worked 38 years. I had 16 jobs in 38 years, which means I changed jobs 15 times. I worked for 7 different companies, and 4 of those companies either were taken over or sold or went out of business. So, historically, oil and gas has been an industry that's had lots of change. And down there at the bottom, if you think I planned this, you're crazy. No one would plan a career that looks like this. I've shown this slide a bunch of times to early career people. And I got that question once or twice. Well, how did you plan this? And it's like, I did not plan this. This is just what happened. I had a career plan all along in my career, but thinking about career plans, I'll call it the old-fashioned way, as a sequence of jobs, it never once came true. I could always tell you the job I wanted to have 5 years down the road or 8 years down the road. But I never actually got that job. Something else happened, something came along, and yet I still had a really great career, and I finally got to the jobs I really wanted to do once I figured that out. So I come from the background that it's really hard to actually plan a career out. And so a better way to do this, well, I'll back up for a second. And so if you can't plan a career, then what's the point of career planning? And I will argue that trying to do career planning as a sequence of jobs, first job 1, then job 2, then job 3, is the problem with career planning. There's a better way to do it, and that's what we're going to talk about here. So I'd like to think about career planning not as a roadmap with turn-by-turn directions. Again, first job 1, then job 2, then job 3. But let's think about it as a framework. So we're going to use career plans to set ourselves, and I put the number 5 years out there. My experience is trying to plan much beyond 5 years is very difficult to do. Too much happens that you don't control, and you yourself may change your goals. But I have found that 5 years is a good sort of target number, and there's nothing wrong if we think about 4 years or 6 years, but somewhere plus or minus 5 years. And we want to use our career plan to set goals that are focused on learning new things and gaining new experiences, with the idea that if we master new skills and have certain experiences, that will qualify us to get to the job or the role that we ultimately want to get to. The problem I see with doing this as a job 1, then job 2, then job 3 exercise is that locks you in on just one route to where you're trying to go. And I put a little graphic up here on the right that's just a Google map from my home over on the right to my favorite golf course down there on the left. And Google throws out 3 routes for me to consider on my drive today. If you only focus on one route, you may miss some opportunities. And so I do not like career plans that start and end with just a focus on a sequence of jobs. It locks you into one way to do it, and you may miss out on some really good opportunities. And it's also very difficult, in my experience, to precisely predict the sequence of jobs that's going to come your way. It's much better to have control, in my experience, on what do I want to learn, what experiences do I need to gain so that in 5 years' time, I can accomplish my goals around having a certain role, having a certain impact, however you might define a 5-year goal for yourself. What's going to matter is what you learn on the way there and what experiences you gain, not exactly which specific job you did. So how do you know what experiences and what learning you need to get? What will benefit you? And the answer is you don't know, certainly not early in your career. So you have to go ask. And there's no point in asking questions if you're not willing to listen with an open mind. This was one of my problems early in my career, is I tended to ask questions, but I kind of thought I already knew the answer when in fact I didn't. So ask and listen is really important. And you're going to hear me emphasize this in my talk here in the next few minutes. Who do you ask? You can ask almost anyone. Ask if you have mentors, ask your mentor, ask your supervisor. Talent manager is a term we use, at least here in the US. Some companies actually have people whose job is to help you with career planning. You can talk to people who are doing the job that you want. If they have that job right now, you can ask them, hey, how did you get the job? What are the key experiences? What are the key skills that I need to have? It's also really interesting to talk to the person who will hire someone into that particular role. So the hiring manager will have his or her view of, here's what I'm looking for. Here's what I want to see in an applicant or a candidate. And it's important to get a really good understanding of all that. The caution I have is in the third bullet, is that if you talk to a lot of people, you're going to get a ton of information. And you're going to sit down and you're going to look at it and you're going to be overwhelmed by it. It's like, wow, I have to learn all of these things and gain all these experiences before I can get to the job I want. And the answer is no, you need to learn the critical ones. No one comes into a job perfectly prepared. Everyone will come into a new role with something that, with a little bit of a gap. You know, that's part of how people are placed into progressive jobs, is we want to give them that opportunity to learn some new things and do some new things. But there are always sort of really important basic things that everyone needs to know in order to qualify to get into a role down the road. So it's important to understand what's really important to the job and what's less important. And we want to focus, of course, just on the important experiences and the important skills that you need to have before you can compete for that next role or the role after that. So critical few things is important. Otherwise, the career plan is just too complicated and literally overwhelming. And then finally, again, feedback. You need to be asking people who you trust, whether it's, and y'all are still students, so professors, you get out into the working world, your supervisor, others, your mentors, you need to get a good perspective on how other people look at you. What are your strengths? What are your weaknesses? What are the improvement areas that you really need to focus on? And those need to be part of your career plan too. This is the important thing I want to, besides the concept of a framework. Too many people think of a career plan as a document. And so we fill out a form, we put it away on our computer, on our desk, and maybe every 6 months or a year, we pull it out, we blow the dust off it, and we look at it, and maybe we update it. The document is not what's important. It's the dialogue. It's all the conversations you have to build your career plan, to network with people, to make them aware of what your career plan is and can they help you. It's a living, breathing process. It's not a start-stop where we complete a document, we file it away, and every so often we pull it out and look at it again. That in my experience, doesn't work very well. Career planning is something that happens in some form or fashion almost every day. So I'm not going to show you some kind of a template or document. Again, you can go on the internet, you go elsewhere, you can find hundreds of samples and forms that you can use. A lot of times the document I used was simply a blank sheet of paper on which I wrote some things down. So the basics, again, we've talked about having a goal. Where do you want to be? What do you want to be doing in, say, 5 years' time, plus or minus? And you can describe that lots of different ways. You can describe a specific job. You can describe an impact. You could describe a scope. You could describe the kinds of data you want to work with and the application of that data to a particular problem. So there's lots of ways to write a goal down. It doesn't just have to be, I want such and such job. Then after all the conversations, you have an understanding of what you need to know in order to get that job. So you'll have a list of skills and knowledge and experiences. Again, the critical ones, the most important ones. And I want to emphasize that these are not just technical skills. We're all scientists here, but business skills come into this, leadership skills, your interpersonal skills, how you work on a team, how you interact with your peers. All of that, counts in this. And so the focus can't just be on, I need to learn another technical thing. It's a broader list of skills. And then you need to do, I'll call it a gap analysis. You need to have a realistic assessment of what you already know against what you need to know. So what are the things I need to focus on learning or doing that I haven't already learned or done? And that's sort of the core of the career plan there. Then we come to behaviors, and I'll emphasize this: a lot of career planning doesn't focus enough on improving, how you work, how you interact with others. So we all come to the table with strengths and weaknesses in our behaviors, and it's important to know what your strong behaviors are, what you're really good at, and things you may need to work on. And that's, again, an important part of feedback. It's not just getting feedback on technical skills or technical competency, but also on your behaviors and your interpersonal style, if you will. Then we know where we are, we know where we're trying to go, and now we need some help from other people to help us understand how we get from where we are to where we want to go. What are the possible roles that will let you gain the skills, knowledge, and experiences you don't already have? And again, I emphasize, don't think of just one role and then another role. There may be 4 or 5 different ways to get all that experience and skills and knowledge. And it's important to have a good list of different ways that you can gain the skills and experience you're trying to gain, because it probably won't happen in the exact order you write it down. But if you have 3 or 4 possibilities, and I go back to my little map there, if you have 3 or 4 different routes, that's a more helpful way to think about this. It could be, my next job might be this one or another one or a third one. It doesn't have to come in an exact order, because it probably won't. You need a training plan. Some things you can learn through training. Most things you're going to learn on the job. Most of us who've been in the business a long time would tell you that 80 to 85% of what you learn it through a sequence of jobs. There are places where a training class, will fill in some gaps for you. Field trips are always good, obviously. But by and large, it's on the job is the critical way you learn. And then again, I'm going to talk about feedback again. So you need, as part of your career plan, say a really good schedule of getting feedback, getting mentoring, having a coach perhaps. And it needs to be, who's going to do this with me? How often? What format are we going to use? There's lots of ways to get feedback. And my experience is that this is something that people say they're going to do all the time. Yeah, I'm going to get feedback on a regular basis, and then it never happens, or it's very light touch. This needs to be a significant effort, and it's not always easy to do. Like I said, part of getting feedback is hearing things you may not like hearing, but they're important, and you need to consider that feedback along with all the positive compliments that I'm sure you're going to get. And then finally, you pull all this together with a timeline. Okay, how fast can I gain these skills and experiences? You can't learn everything in 5 years. I'll show you in a slide, how some things played out for me. But it's useful to work with people to build out a reasonable timeline for this. And then lastly, on this slide, the little graphic on the right is one that you'll see out there a lot in the career planning world. And what it's intended to indicate is that where you want to line up is the intersection of these three things. So competencies are things you're good at, passion are things you obviously care about, and business need is what the company you're working for actually needs. When you have that intersection, everything works well for you. The reason I put it here, I mean, competencies and passion are kind of obvious, but it's important to understand that not all businesses have a need for what you may really love to do and what goals you're trying to achieve. So you do need to do a reality check. Okay, if this is my career plan, and in 5 years' time, I want a certain role, is that a role that exists in this company, and is it important to the company? And if not, you may need to reassess. And I'm not saying you change what you're passionate about or you change the sequence of gaining more and more competency, but you may need to change where you're working, what you're working on, or who you're working for. Business need is something that gets not discussed enough sometimes in the process of career planning. And I would encourage you, when you're talking to people like your supervisors or your mentors or coaches, to make sure you touch on business needs as part of all of this. You can have a great career plan, but if it's not in a role that the company really wants, it'll be a struggle to get there. So goals can change over time, and that'd be the kind of the next to last thing I'm going to leave you with here is that, okay, we do these plans, and it's another reason to only think about maybe 5-6 years out is you may change your mind. I certainly changed mine multiple times, and I'm going to, in the middle of the slide, you can see it there. My first job was seismic data processing, and so my first career goal was to be the supervisor of seismic data processing. I thought seismic data processing was really fun. I was good at it. And I thought that would be like the best job ever. And I never got that job, never. Changed companies, different company. The next job that I really fell in love with was to be an area geophysicist, which meant you were the lead geophysicist for a particular business unit or a collection of assets. And you got to do any and everything with geophysics. So seismic acquisition, data processing, interpretation. It was like the whole gamut of geophysics in one job. And I thought that was like the best job ever. And that was the job I wanted at, 5 years down the road. And I never got it. Changed companies again. And in this other company, this is Shell now, they had a position called manager of geophysics, which was like area geophysicists, only even a bigger job. And so you did all the things in geophysics, data acquisition, data processing, data interpretation. You supervised all of that. You also helped people with career plans and moving from job to job. And this is where I really started getting interested in career planning. And so I thought, well, manager of geophysics, that's the perfect job for me. And I never got it. And then after I did a couple of years of interpretation and got to drill a couple of wells, I discovered the role of exploration manager, and that became the job I really wanted. And it took me 8 years to get it. I started out with a 5-year plan, and I could not get all of the experiences I needed and all the, I'll call it the exposure I needed in a 5-year period to be really qualified to apply for an exploration manager role. It took 8 years, but then I got that job and 5 more behind it, all in the exploration space, and loved every minute of that. But this is now 15 to 20 years into my career before I actually had a goal come true. So it is a journey. It's a process. Be willing to change, and as things around you change, or as you change your view of what's an interesting job or role, it's perfectly okay to tear up the old career plan and build another one. But again, I emphasize, at any point in my career, I could have told you what I wanted to do 5 years out, and it never came exactly true. I did get to the exploration manager job I want, but not the way I thought it would turn out. And things happened after that again, I could not have predicted the sequence of jobs that I had, but I did capture all of the learnings I wanted. I had, at this point in time, I was using the template that I'm talking to you about, where I focused less on what my next job would be. I focused more on what else do I want to learn? What other basins do I want to work in? What experiences do I want to get? And I didn't get all of them in the exact order I thought I would, but I eventually got them all. And it helped me to have that framework. When an opportunity came along that I didn't expect, I could always test it against my career plan. Okay, this isn't a job I was thinking about, but would it teach me something I need to learn? Would it give me experience that I want to have? And if yes, then I could take it and feel comfortable that I was still on the route to where I was trying to go. Okay, last slide. Just kind of tie all this together. Again, I'm giving you a different way to think about career plans. I value thinking about them as a framework, not a roadmap. Even though I'm writing down where am I trying to go here, you do need a destination, but focus more on not which jobs get you there first. Focus first on how do I get there? What do I need to know? And what do I need to learn in order to get that job? And then what do I have to do to capture that knowledge and capture those learnings and get those experiences? What are the possibilities? How many different jobs are out there that I might be able to do that will help me along the way? It's not just a straight, simple sequence. Feedback, you've heard me talk about it now for the last 10 minutes or so. Lots of feedback is important, mentoring and coaching. We didn't have as much of that when I started out in the business. It's gotten very popular. I'm sure you guys are very well versed in it. And I encourage you not just to have technical mentors, but to have, whether you want to call it a coach or mentor, have people mentor you in other aspects as well. You have to have an open mind and be willing to listen. Otherwise, feedback doesn't work. Mentoring and coaching won't work. And again, I list that only because I struggled with that personally early in my career. And with the benefit of being a lot older now, I can see that I was my own worst enemy in some ways by not being as willing to listen as I should have been. Networking. I haven't talked a lot about networking, so I'll spend a minute here. Networking is not how many connections you have on LinkedIn. Networking is how many people you talk to and you share your goals, your career plans, what you're trying to do, where you'd like to go next, career-wise, what you need to learn. That's networking. And I can tell you of those 16 jobs that I had in my career, at least 5 were the result of networking. Somebody phoned me up, sent me a note and said, hey, I know you're trying to do such and such a thing. Did you see this job? Or are you aware of this? And help me make connections and find things that I otherwise wouldn't have found. So networking, you guys know this, it's important, but I emphasize it's not just having connections out on social media, it's actually talking with people and making sure that they know what you're trying to do. And the last thing I'll say is be willing to take a risk every now and again when something unexpected comes along. Instead, if you have a career plan that's based on a learning and experience framework, and here comes an opportunity you had never thought about or considered, you can test it against that framework. And if it fits, even if it's not something you really thought about, go ahead and take the risk if you want. I don't encourage just wild risk taking. I had an interesting opportunity in my career to leave oil and gas and go work in the pharmaceutical business. But I judged it passed a lot of tests in terms of what I would learn and get to do. But I judged it as a little too risky for me because I thought if it didn't work out, I might not be able to get back into oil and gas. But I've taken some risks along the way where people encouraged me to take a job that I hadn't thought about, even if I didn't feel completely prepared for it. I learned to trust the judgment of good mentors, good coaches. And when somebody says, hey, yeah, I know this is a little bit scary and you weren't thinking about it, but you really should do it. So I encourage considering the unexpected and being willing to take a little bit of a risk. Okay, that is it for me. Again, there've been books written on career planning. You can spend a lot of time worrying about, what form to fill out and all that. And again, I'm trying to give you just one person's opinion of a different way to think about it. It's not a piece of paper. It's a conversation. It's not a map with, step 1, step 2, step 3. It's framework around learning and experiences. So it creates options for you potentially. But it's a constant dialogue. You're always talking to people about your career plan, how it's going, changes you've made in it. People need to know where they can't help you. So lots of communication. And so willing to take questions on this topic or any other topic. This is an Ask Me Anything moment. My question to you is, since we have talked here about career plans, is how could the SEG, or how should we at the SEG think about helping students and early career professionals with career, I can't talk now, career planning and career management? I'd welcome any thoughts or ideas that you guys have. And with that, I'm going to stop. Thank you so much for listening.
For a great presentation, and it was great to hear from you, from your experiences, from your 16 experiences. So actually, I think we have some questions from our board members, and we can open the question to others. So guys, do you have any questions in order to ask to Mr. Pete? So I have some questions, but I wanted to give the microphone to our board. Okay. Anyone else?
Yes. Hello, Mr.
Hello.
Cramer. Thank you for your presentation. It was really informative, especially for us students who are in like third or fourth year of their studies, who are only beginning to think of their careers after graduation. So my question would be, like, you've talked about what to consider when making this choice, the career choices, but was there a time when you had to say no to some opportunities? If yes, what made you say no, for example?
I said no multiple times, and this is kind of a great question, by the way. So in the real world, family matters too. I turned down a job that would have required me to move my family someplace that my wife did not want to go. I've turned down jobs. Again, I turned down one that I thought was an incredibly interesting opportunity outside of oil and gas, but I thought that it just presented too much of a risk for me in terms of not sort of taking the job, but in case it didn't work out, I thought I might have left myself in a dead end situation where I wasn't going to continue working in pharmaceuticals, and I'd lost all my connections in oil and gas, and I might not have a way to find my way back home. I've turned down a job for that. I've turned down jobs where I just didn't feel the fit in the company was good. In other words, it was an interesting role, but when I interviewed and got to get a feel for the culture in the company, it just didn't feel like a place that I felt I would belong. Gosh, what else? When I've said yes, I mean, I'll take the opposite side of that. When I've said yes, it was because it met a career goal or progressed my career. And in terms of changing companies, it was the combination of I liked the environment that I found in the company as I was interviewing there. And it's an interesting, now we do so much remotely now. One of the things you miss in remote interviewing is the chance to actually experience what it is like in the office. And that's important in my mind, is to actually get, if you can, actually visit, the office you might be working in, even if it's only, on a, 2-day a week or 3-day a week or 4-day a week basis. It's important to get a feel for the culture of the company, and as much of the leadership as you can, to judge that fit. There's lots of opportunities out there. I think you need to set a fairly high bar on, okay, this is a good fit for me. It advances my career in the way that I want. I think people sometimes are too quick to jump into opportunities that aren't really the right fit or the right role. And I would urge a little caution there. Did that help?
Yes, it did. Thank you. So why I'm asking is because some of us will be fresh graduates quite soon. So we're kind of hungry for a job. So it's important not to make the wrong decision, maybe. Yeah, maybe not the optimal one, at least. And you've mentioned a part that also interested me, because you said that when you switched jobs, you've lost all of your connections. So throughout my years of studies, I've also kind of accumulated some through networking, some connections in the oil and gas industry. So now that I'm choosing to pursue different careers, maybe. How did you feel after like switching, and how did you gain this new network after losing the previous one?
Let me, I would, here would be my best description. One of the difficult things is, if you remember, I've stopped sharing, I won't reshare, but I left a big oil company. I left Shell Oil to go work for a little tiny company called British Borneo. So I went from a company, everyone on this call knows Shell Oil. It employs probably 30,000 people worldwide. I went to a company that employed 23 people, and I was the 23rd. It was a huge change in culture. We moved my family from New Orleans to Houston, which is not that far, but so we had to reestablish, we're in a different city, had to make new friends. I went to a completely different culture, but I did that on purpose, actually, to get away from a big bureaucratic company where I didn't think I fit in as well as I would in a small, more entrepreneurial environment. And then when that company failed, and that's one of the risks of small companies, they don't all succeed. I had to go find another job. And this is one of the times my network really paid off. I got a call from someone I used to work with at Shell, who knew that I was, available for work and wanted to be in exploration. And he called me and said, "I've got an exploration manager job. Would you like it?" And I absolutely. Now, should I have said that? I should have actually done a bit more interviewing and homework, but it worked out okay. That company was Phillips Petroleum, and a year later we merged with Conoco and became ConocoPhillips. So I've been there 1 year. I had just begun to build out my network in that company to meet people. And at the merger, each company laid off half of its staff. So the new company was the same size as either of the previous companies. So each company basically kept half of its people and laid off half of its people. So I had to start again. A lot of the people that I had established as my inside the company network were gone. And here's all these people from Conoco, almost none of whom I knew. And it takes time to do that. I would tell you the first 2-3 years after the merger, I wasn't the only one in that situation. Lots of people lost much of their network and had to build out a new network with a bunch of people they had never worked with before, didn't know. There was a bit of mistrust between the two companies. So those things can be really difficult. But it's just so important to do. I'm really pleased to have, I've got a big network now. I do a lot of consulting kind of in the background that I use my network for. I'll get asked to find information out about certain projects, certain companies, and it's almost always the case I can find someone I know that can help me with that. So networking is just one more of those things you have to work on. And again, your network is not, again, how many connections you have on LinkedIn. It's how many people you're actually talking to and working with. I use that LinkedIn list as just sort of it's like a set of index cards on my desk for business cards. And I go through and prune it every so often. What matters are just the people you actually have a relationship with. That's kind of a long answer to your question. But again, I emphasize, when you're coming out of school, it can be difficult. I'll share this. I was fortunate to graduate at a time when the oil industry was extremely busy and expanding. So there was lots of on-campus interviewing. I went to 5 interviews and ended up with 5 job offers. And how do you decide? And my decision process was as follows. I took the job that put me closest to my then girlfriend, period, full stop. So I had the short commute to visit her. She's now my wife, by the way, so it all worked out. But don't use that as your example. I would have been better served in my career, to be honest, to have started at a different company. I had a great time at Gulf Oil, but I would have done much better to start at Shell, since I eventually ended up at Shell. Things might have worked out quite a bit differently. But my consideration was, the pay was all the same. It was really about location for me. And not that that's wrong, but more factors should go into it besides that.
So any more questions?
Thank you for the answer.
Oh, thank you. Great questions. So guys, if I'm not seeing any more questions, so talk to me a little about what and there are no bad ideas here. I'm curious to see. Can you imagine or think about things that you would like to see the SEG do for students or early career? It doesn't just have to be in career planning, but in anything at all. We're really anxious to get more students involved in SEG and to keep them as members once they complete their studies and go on and work. And so we're trying to understand what we could offer that would be valuable to all of you that would keep you around.
So actually I have some suggestions. Like in SEG, you are doing so lot for the career guidance. Like with the collaboration with Chevron, you are funding the field camps, outreach programs, and some more. So what about the holding the internship programs for those who complete some courses within SEG with successfully completion? Like in SEG ASOIU, we are doing so much. Like we are holding courses, sessions, conferences for students. So, and in the sessions, it lasts about 6 or 7 months. And after completion, we have to give something to the students who successfully completed these courses. What about engaging the students into some internship opportunities? Like thanks to Chevron, thanks to other companies, like you can make this internship programs in different countries, in different cities, or you can make it just in Houston or Texas. Like, what do you think about it?
So I think it's an interesting idea. Let me ask you a question back, because I don't know. Let's say we had some money and we could create, with your help, some internship opportunities in Baku. Do you think companies would be receptive to that if the SEG paid the costs to do that they could take in, I don't know, some number of students on internships and give them good projects to work on?
Sorry for internet connection. I think if the SEG Global, not SEG ASOIU, will support this idea, I think that the companies like BP, SOCAR would like to help us. Because for the field camp, actually the BP and the SOCAR are willing to help us, like to hold the camps, to hold the outreach programs in different schools. So I think if the SEG comes up with some internship programs, they are welcome to hold in Azerbaijan, in Baku.
Okay, I think that's a really interesting idea. Let me figure out how I pass that around and how we do that.
So actually, before the holding the internship programs in Baku, Azerbaijan, actually SEG needs to show himself in Baku, because SEG is going to known from SEG ASOIU, not from SEG BOTS, from SEG Global, because we have started our activities from this year. And in order to show ourselves in a good way, we have to hold some conferences or some big events in Baku. So that's why my suggestions will be firstly to hold big conference like geoscience conference or SEG conference in Baku, if it will be accepted from SEG Global.
Okay. That's a good one too.
Yes. So guys, do you have any
to add to what Javid has said? We've recently had lecturers from SOCAR, and they have expressed their interest in new exploration projects onshore. So I think SOCAR would be interested to meet the new blood, like to taking some interns. Also, JOCAP, the joint project of Total Energies and SOCAR in Upshur, they're also available. Like they're close to students in a way.
Yeah.
So I think it has potential. This suggestion.
Okay. No, that's an interesting idea. My only thing I want to caution on is that money is part of the problem. And I think that's the solvable part. Good internships require that the company commit mentors and have a project in mind that the interns can work on if it's more than one intern, or an intern can be partnered with a more senior person. And that would be the conversation is to BP and SOCAR is, okay, will you make staff available? What I wouldn't want to see happen is they nod their heads and say, yes, we'll do these internships. And then we put people into the office and no one's there to really help them or to do the project. It becomes, a bit of a disappointment. That's an easily solvable problem, but we need the commitment of BP and SOCAR and whoever else to do it. And that's the thing that I think SEG can work on a little bit. We probably have connections into all those companies. And it'd be a really novel way to do this, where we say, look, we'll pay the intern a stipend. You provide, coaching and mentoring while they're working there, and a decent project to work on. It's not just busy work. It's something that's got some good technical meat on it, and something that you can learn from. Cool idea. I like that.
Yeah, because in terms of connections, SEG has proved itself pretty well, I would say, because a lot of past presidents of the local clubs are now geophysicists at BP, in Baker Hughes. So yeah, we have, even us, like on our level, we have some connections with our faculty advisors who are currently employed in those companies.
That's actually a big plus. Thank you for saying that. That helps frame a conversation. I'm just
I would like to also add another side of it. Like Jared has mentioned, the professional opportunities. But the thing that I see a lack of currently in Baku is the research assistantships, or lack of them. So yeah, because there are a lot of driven students who would like to contribute to the academia, but not enough projects for them,
Yeah.
Yeah. So if SEG could connect us with the PhD students, maybe with the professors who all have ongoing projects, to help them remotely, because local students some of them have outstanding scientific writing skills, which are being encouraged at our local universities.
Do you think it would be possible to do a research assistantship like you're describing? Could it be done all remote, so that, for instance, since you sit in Baku, but you're actually working for a professor that is someplace else in the world?
The only part that I see as a hardship for that is the absence of exposure to the site that is being, for example, researched. But apart from that, students can assist in writing, in researching, if mentored by the leaders a bit. So I think it can be done remotely.
Okay. I've got, we have, like I said, we have a number of SEG past presidents who are researchers themselves. So I know who to ask about this and see what they think. That's another interesting one.
That would be excellent.
Yeah.
Because I think even the SEG scholarship requires you to provide some publications that you've had.
Yeah.
And for example, for me, unfortunately, I've had some internships, but never a research-related experience.
Yeah. Other thoughts or comments?
So guys, do you have any comments, any questions to ask, or suggestions? Maybe Mr. Sergio, if you have any question.
No questions, just thanks for everything. Thanks to Pete and all of you guys for being so active and so, you're promoting lots of interesting activities. And it's a pleasure to be of any help. Thank you, Pete.
Yeah, no problem, Sergio. And I want to echo that. You guys are making a name for yourself inside the SEG. It's like, who are these people that are reaching out and grabbing me or Ken or everyone else you've done to do a talk? And I know Ken Tubman gave his talk a couple weeks back, and he said he thoroughly enjoyed it, and I have too as well. But yeah, keep on doing this. You guys are great.
Thanks a lot. So, Mr. Pete, do you have any questions, any comments for us, or anything you would like to?
No, I hope you found it useful. I certainly enjoyed putting it together and talking with you all for a little bit. I appreciate the several suggestions we've gotten here. I'll feed those back in over here. I would say the only thing I'd caution is the SEG is not known for moving really quickly, so be patient for a little bit as we work our way through this and lots of other things. I'm excited because Ken is he's really committed to trying to change SEG. It's if COVID taught us anything, it's that the SEG was out of date and not working well with the next generation of members, which includes all of you. So we're kind of waking up to that fact and trying to ask questions and listen as much as we can. And the door is always open. You guys can find, you've got my email, you've got Ken's, and anytime you have a question or a thought or whatever, feel free to drop us a note. We'd love to hear from you as often as you want to, ping us with information. Meanwhile, study hard, make good grades. I'll be your parents. Stay out of trouble.
Thank you.
Thank you. If I can make one last remark, because we've talked about career growth, career planning, but what about our future in the SEG? We will most probably stay in touch with the Slack community and the presenters that we have met, but how do we progress in the SEG as, for example, faculty advisors, maybe in the future managers like you?
I would say, great question. So let me back up. So I joined the SEG as soon as I was eligible, as soon as I met the qualifications. So you had to have, since I didn't have an advanced degree, I had to have, I think it was 3 or 4 years of work experience before they would take me in. So I joined as soon as I could. And I was active for the next probably 5-6 years in the SEG. I gave papers locally, even won an award on one. But then as I got in management, I kind of lost contact with the SEG. My job changed. What was taking up my time changed. It was kind of more business and less technically focused. So I kind of spent the next, 10, 12 years not doing much with the SEG. I mean, I paid my membership bill and I would go to the conference, maybe not every year, but most years. And then starting in 2015, I got involved with the SEG Foundation and then back into the SEG, where I've now been involved 8 years between the two. So it may ebb and flow a little bit in your career. Again, just depends on how your career plays out. I'm also a member of AAPG, so the Geology Society. And I know you're talking to Anna Shaughnessy and Mary Angela coming up soon. And Mary Angela is a member of all three, SEG, SPE, the engineering side, and AAPG. So it's a good question to ask her too, if you can remember to ask her. I think you'll find her answer interesting as well. So, it's been kind of an ebb and a flow with the SEG, but I'm really happy to be back engaged. And, my advice would be, once you graduate, stay a member of the SEG. It's a great way, again, to, and the level of your involvement can be anything from a lot to a little. I mean, you can chair sessions, organize conferences, you can be very heavily involved, and it's a great way to meet people and to expand your network. You may find that other things take precedence for a while in your life, and you may have to kind of scale that back, and it's all okay either way.
Okay.
Which is a long way of saying the SEG will welcome you at any point in your career to be as involved as you want. We never turn away volunteers and people who want to get involved.
That is nice to know. Thank you.
For presentation, and thank you for sharing your experience with us. I think that's the end of our webinar. So I think we can end the session and the webinar.
Very good. Thank you guys so much. It was great fun. Again, best of luck to all of you and stay in touch.
Okay, goodbye. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Goodbye.
Goodbye.
Thank you and goodbye.
Thank you very much.
Goodbye.